Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Michael Picard, and we are here tonight with Shimmy, who is who has been who is wrongfully accused of a crime for the past 11 months. But before we bring him on, I just want to give some announcements for those of you who are still waiting for your merch. Thank you guys so much, all of you. The merch has been a success, and a lot of people have already gotten their merch, but also a lot of people haven't. And we have gotten over 1,000 orders, and I really appreciate all your support, and I thank you guys for holding on just a little longer. Anyone who has ordered their merch around November 15th and after should receive it by the first of next year, by January 1st, 2022. And I also want to bring your attention to another new merch tonight, which will 100%, uh, the profits will 100% go to our guest, who, like I said, he was wrongfully accused of a crime, and his life has been upended because of that. And live, starting tonight, you will be able to buy merch to help him rebuild his life. And I would like to show you that. One second, guys. Okay, here we go. So if you go to my site, picard.co, you'll notice the merch button right here. You press the merch, scroll down to the bottom, and you will see the Shimmy free hoodie. Now, again, 100% of the profits will go to Shimmy. Everything I earned tonight from tonight's live stream, whether it be highlighted comments or ads through the live stream, um, or if you purchase a shirt, 100% of it will go to Shimmy. And if you find his cause to be just and you want to help him rebuild his life, I implore you to buy this shirt. So it's $40 and plus shipping. And also, I have this right here. These are the links for tonight, and they'll make sense to you as we go on throughout the live stream. But I have the Essex County DA, Jonathan Blodgett, his office number, who was who is the head of the office that was in charge of prosecuting Shimmy. And I have, of course, the merch link. You could also donate to Shimmy by using the GoFundMe link in the ticker that you see. And of course, I have his attorney, Murat Erkan, I believe is how you pronounce it, his website. So, without further ado, I would like to bring on Shimmy. Hey, Shimmy, how are you?
What's up, Mike? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, better than I was on December 12th and the 11 months that followed. 11 and a half months, actually, if you want to be exact.
That's right. It's almost been a year since you got charged, right?
Yeah, next week, the 12th will be a year. On November 30th is the day that um, they somewhat ended the nightmare for me. So, depending on how you look at it, we're almost at a year. So, yeah.
So take me back to the beginning before we get started with what happened that day. Tell
Hmm.
me, tell everyone who does not know you a little bit about yourself. Like, where did you work before the incident?
Um, all right. Well, for everybody who doesn't know me, my real name is Ernst Jean-Jacques Jr. I'm 33. At the time before this whole ordeal, I worked with adults with disabilities at a day program. So basically, I was a day support provider for them, help them with social skills and certain goals that each client would have depending on their certain situation or whatever. Um, and besides that, I've always really been into community, doing community service and stuff like that. And that all came into play when I got to college. I graduated from the Pennsylvania State University, and while I was there, I joined the most noble fraternity in the whole wide world, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and that's what really got me into like community service work. Um, so the summer of, I guess you could say the summer of 2020 or May, it was the end of May, and the whole George Floyd situation had happened, and that's when I really just started, I guess, paying attention to like what was going on in the world. And that's when I started like protesting. And eventually I ran into you. That's how you and I had first met, like just outside. I think the first time I ever saw you was in West Roxbury. Um,
That was about a year and a half ago, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, yeah, that was like June of 2020, sometime around that. Um, so that's when I started like protesting, but I've always been doing this community service, whether it's community cleanups or going to schools, inner city schools, and talking to the youth, um, clothing and food drives, um, toys for the holidays, um, menstrual products for folk who are in need, all kind of stuff like that. Just giving back to the community any way I could, and I've always had the community like support behind me to do that. Like I don't do any of these things by myself. It's always people. I'll throw out an idea that I'm doing, and people will see it, and they're like, "Yo, I want to help it. I want to help you out. That's dope. What can I do?" And then we'll communicate what each other can do, and then we'll make it happen. So everything that I do for the most part, whether it be my full-time work or it be like my extracurricular activity, everything involves me working with others. So
Right. And
that's how
and
I got to you.
and you're not uh you were telling me off camera that you have been convicted of a traffic violation.
Yeah, so I guess it's funny because on that day, December 12th, when I was arrested, when I was being processed, they obviously asked me on my name. I told them my name because I'm not going to lie to them about my name, even though looking back at it, I think they already knew who I was. But like I told them who I was, and when they ran my name, they were like, "Yeah, you got a ticket in 2009 for littering." And I'm just like, "Huh?" Like I didn't even know that, and I thought I paid it. And if I paid it, why is that shit still on my record? But like, that's the only, for transparency, that's the only thing I had on my record at the time. So I had really no priors to that.
So you're not a dangerous person, you're not a violent person, you've never been charged with any violent crimes, right?
No, I've never been charged with any violent crimes. I've never been involved in any violent acts, but I could just walk down the street and somebody who doesn't know me see me and just be intimidated, and they could be scared. So I can't say I'm not a scary person, but I don't think I am. And you know me and you see what I do. I don't think I give off that vibe of being scary.
I've known you for about a year and a half now or so, and I've never seen you be violent. I've never seen you push anyone or punch anyone. And certainly our mutual friends, you know that you're not a violent person.
Yeah.
So take me back to that day. Why did you why were you there in the first place?
So I heard that there was a Donald Trump, like a pro Donald Trump, pro police rally in Swampscott led by Dianna Ploss. And you know Dianna's not a very nice person. So I was basically going just to speak on my thoughts and my perspective on everything that they were speaking about, on the president that at the time that they supported, on the practices of the police that they supported. I basically was going there to speak against that.
Okay. And so what happened then? Like, what happened leading up to the incident?
All right, so for more transparency, I had never been to Swampscott. I didn't know where Swampscott was really in Massachusetts. I just knew that there was a Donald Trump rally and I was going to go. So I get to Swampscott, and as soon as I get out of the vehicle, as soon as I get out of the vehicle, this old lady crosses the street and she starts yelling at me like, "Oh, if you don't like it, get out of here." And right then and there, Mike, I should have knew like this was going to be different, because I had never gotten confronted like that, like literally as soon as I'm getting out of my car or whatever. So I get out of the car, I walk up to the rally. I got there after it had already started. So by the time I got there, the Donald Trump people were on one side, and then everybody who was against them was also on that same side. So everybody was just on the same side of the street. I believe you were already there. So I get there, it's just loud, but you know how these rallies are. There's blow horns, there's music, there's just people yelling on both sides. The police are there. There's a lot of them. So yeah, it's just like any other rally, just a lot going on. Just a lot of just yelling on both sides.
And so just briefly tell me about what happened that caused the incident.
So basically, while I'm at the rally, this might have been like 30 minutes maybe after I got there. Maybe a little bit more, but not much more time after that. I get there and I'm walking around the barricade, and I stop in front of this group of women, and there's a song playing on the speaker. I don't know the name of the song, but it goes, "It's raining men, hallelujah." So I'm dancing just like this. It's raining men.
And just to interject, everyone else was dancing too, right?
Yeah. I'm by, for more transparency, I'm by myself, and on the other side of the barricade, there's at least 3 or 4 women, and they're all dancing. So I'm dancing along with them. So it's like a mutual thing. We may not agree on what the hell either are saying, but in that moment, we're clearly both catching a vibe. So we're just dancing. It's raining. I put my head up, like just enjoying the moment. And I just feel just a splash of just cold liquid on my face. And
just to I want to show you guys a few video clips as we're talking.
Yeah. Luckily for us.
So this is right preceding the incident,
Yeah.
right before the incident. Obviously, you're right in front of Lisa, I believe her name is, in the black coat.
Yes, I believe that's her name.
And this is, you'll see for yourselves, but this is Bubbe. Bubbe is the one in the red and white scarf. She's watching Shimmy simply dance. You know, it's not a crime to dance. You were like a good 4 or 5 feet in front of her. You weren't like right in her face in her personal space, right?
I wasn't, no.
And you weren't doing anything that I've seen that was really provocative. You were just dancing like everyone else was dancing.
Yes.
So here's the video clip. Here's Bubbe right in the center of the screen in the sunglasses. You'll see her bend down to grab something. She walks away from Shimmy, who's dancing in front of the barricades, and you'll see her bend down to grab a bottle of water, come back to Shimmy, and then splash him. So, yeah, it looks to me like she grabbed something from the ground and then splashed you. And you're dancing just like this, blonde lady. Just like this blonde lady, right there in the hat, right there, right by the behind Bubbe, and she's dancing just like you are. Yet she didn't splash a bottle of water.
We were dancing
on that
together.
lady.
We were dancing together. We were partners in that moment, her and I.
Right. So, I want to show you guys another clip. Just shortly. Bear with me, guys. This is a video that I shot from my perspective. Here it is. And this is in slow motion, just so that you guys can see, the water splashed down to the ground. And also, they accused Shimmy of punching her. You could clearly see in the video that he didn't have a fist. He, with an open hand, swatted the water bottle away from her so that she couldn't continue to pour water on him.
That's correct. And the anger and the just nastiness in their faces, like it's amazing to just watch over and over.
It is, and I just want to show two or three more clips. One is of the next one I'm going to show you is where is it? Is this it? And then if you look closely, this is again in slow motion, but it's zoomed in. If you look closely at this video, you can see as you swat the bottle of water away, you can see that the water come out of the bottle. You can see the sprinkles right by the Trump sign.
At the bottom of the Trump sign. I just seen that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and just so that you guys know, here's a screen grab of Shimmy with an open hand, swatting the bottle of water away. And here is the bottle after Shimmy swatted it away. If he punched her, if he went directly towards her body, the water bottle wouldn't be smashed downwards. That's like when you swat the bottle down, it caves in on itself. It's not like, it's smashed in from the side as if you were punching the water bottle from the side. So, yeah, what happened once you were, what happened after the scene?
So basically, after I attempted to get the bottle out of her hand, when I swatted it, it was like immediately, man, like the Swampscott Police Department were on me, like on some, like, grab me by my hood right here, pull me to the side. And I'm trying to tell them, I'm like, yo, that lady just threw water at me. And one of the officers is like while he's asking me what happened, he's in real time like telling me to shut the fuck up and all of this. And I'm like, how are you gonna ask me to tell you what happened and then you're telling me to shut the fuck up? There are people that are trying to talk to the officers like, we saw what happened. He's a victim. The officers didn't want to talk to these people like at all. They pulled me over to the side. Maybe 2 minutes went by, and then I guess an officer who's of higher power came over and was like, "Yeah, you're right now you're under arrest for being investigated for assault and battery." And I'm like, assault and battery, under arrest? They cuffed me. They walked me over to the car, and then they brought me to the station, processed me, and then I had to go through the motions to be able to get out, and then the whole court proceeding started. And then I get out of the station a few hours later, and I find out that there's a video of Bubbe admitting to a police officer that she got water on me because I was dancing and it made her mad. But I'm just getting out of the station with assault and battery charges. So it's just like I had no idea what was going on. Like I couldn't fathom at that moment what was going on.
And I just want to show them the clip of that.
Gyrating in front of me, and I was getting mad, and I did get water on it. I don't want to lie. I don't want
You assaulted him first then.
I wanted to fuck off.
Talk me after, because man, I love you. On what? You're videotaping what a victim is talking to me about in private.
Anyways, that was the video clip. That was Bubbe admitting that she poured water all over you.
And then she lied and said I punched her. But I also heard that when Bubbe was offered medical treatment, Bubbe didn't take any, and then Bubbe stayed for the rest of the rally. Now I'm not the biggest man in the world, nor am I like a professional fighter, but like I do have common sense, Mike. And if I did in fact punch an 80-year-old woman in the face, because that was the accusation at the time. The accusation changed like 4 times over 11 months. But in real time, in that moment, the accusation was I punched her in the face. If I did in fact punch her in the face, Mike, would she have been able to stay at the rally for the rest of the time? Wouldn't there have been some kind of mark on her? Like, wouldn't something have happened? I
would think that she would at least get medical attention.
None.
An 80-year-old woman being impervious to being punched, not seeking any medical attention. That's something new to me.
Something to a lot of people at that point.
I'd like to bring in your lawyer, attorney Murat Erkan. I believe Erkan. Okay. Attorney Murat Erkan. How are you, attorney?
I'm wonderful. Call me Murat.
Nice. Thank you for joining us, Murat.
My pleasure. Hi, Shimmy. How are you?
I'm doing good. How have I done so far?
Oh, miraculous as always.
All right. Cool.
Wonderful. And well, actually, I would say even better, because I think that the more that you're talking about this openly in the context of, knowing what the end result of your case was, the less stressful it is for you, and the more you're able to sort of add some, detail and perspective on what happened to you. So I think you're doing even better.
And I think more importantly, it feels good to finally be able to speak openly about how I feel currently about this, how I felt like the entire time this was like weighing down on me, how I felt in that moment, because the whole time it's just been the victim. And the whole time the victim was actually the person who did the crime, and I'm the victim, but like I can't really say anything because I'm the one that's undergoing like the prosecution and the charges are weighing on me. So it's like every time we speak about this, it's like talk to Murat. But now I actually get to like tell you like, yo, this whole situation, everybody fucked me up. Like a lot. So it definitely feels good to be able to like talk about it openly now.
Sure.
The weight off your shoulder.
It's a testament to your resiliency that you've been able to bounce back, in my view, really quite remarkably. I'm glad.
Thank you.
So I'd like to ask you, Murat, how you became involved in this case. What drew your attention?
Yeah, so I'm a private defense attorney in Andover. I've been in private practice since 2006, and I only take clients that retain me. So I don't do any public defender work, and I don't accept pro bono cases except for very, very limited circumstances, just because of the nature of my practice. But I occasionally get appointed by the federal court if for special cases where they have a need. And I'm also on a list with the National Lawyers Guild to be contacted if an individual was arrested in the context of asserting their the right to express themselves in a peaceful demonstration. And so I think it might have been a Sunday that I got a call or an email from the National Lawyers Guild with a quick soundbite about, Shimmy, who he was as a person, and what the allegation was, and something about it said, I'm gonna answer this call, and I went and I did. So that's how I ended up getting involved with the case, and I think I had a brief chat with Shimmy, about what happened, and I began my fact-finding process from there, and met him in the courthouse, and then boom, off to the races.
I think the most important thing that you need to add in is that conversation we had on that Sunday. You were very honest with me and was like, yo, I know that this situation is messed up. However, this is like what you need to kind of put in your mind of like the possibility that something could happen. Right. And at that point, I didn't know, I've never been involved in anything like this, but just the fact that he told me, like, he didn't bullshit me. He didn't tell me what he thought I wanted to hear. He kept it honest with me. I couldn't appreciate it then, but I really respect it now. Like, I'm really grateful that he did that. And he was honest with me moving forward the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard conversation because, I think that we all sort of have our ideals about how we perceive the world and how we perceive the justice system. And, just imagine it from Shimmy's perspective. And, he was there. He experienced every minute of it, and he knows the truth of what happened, and yet another story is what's being told, and a person who buys into the system of justice as being sort of a well-calibrated machine that's just would have trouble understanding that they wouldn't be almost immediately exonerated. But unfortunately, the reality of the system is that it is a terribly broken down machine laden with all of the wrong intentions at times. And the temptation as a lawyer is to immediately tell the client what they want to hear. Everything's going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. But that doesn't reflect the reality of the world in which we live. We're all familiar with countless stories of individuals who have been wrongfully accused of a crime, and then convicted of that same crime, and not only years later through the providence of some random DNA evidence are they able to sort of be exonerated. Only with that level of compelling proof are they able to be exonerated. So the hard reality that I knew Shimmy would discover, whether I told him about it or not, was that this was going to be an absolutely grueling process. But what I did try to, help him understand was that this would be a work of love for me to take this case, and that I would welcome him into my life as a cherished member of my family that I was going to fight for until the very end. Over the process, though it was quite stressful for Shimmy, he was able to see that the strategy that we put in place really from the inception of this case, all paid off in the end. It was hard through the process because, I mean, you don't get to taste the cake until it's baked, right? So he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't really understand all the tiny little details that I'm putting into place and setting up until the big payoff. And, fortunately, he was able to see the big payoff in really kind of spectacular fashion, which resulted in a wonderful little moment where there was absolute correct justice in the world because Shimmy was the victim and Greenberg was the accused. That was a short-lived moment.
Shimmy, what were your I guess what were your thoughts going into the criminal justice system? How did you think it worked? What were some misconceptions that you had?
I was naive. I thought, well, one, I was scared because I've never been involved in something like that. Like, obviously, I've interacted with police. Like, I've been pulled over, like I've gotten tickets. So I have interacted with police before, but I've never been like brought to arrested, brought to a station, and then told that I need to go to court in 2 days because I've been charged with assault and battery. And then when I get to court, hear that like I'm allegedly a danger to society, and like they need to talk about whether or not they might need to hold me for like a period of time until they can have a dangerousness hearing. And at that moment right there, that's when I knew. I'm like, oh yeah, this shit is serious. Like,
It's getting real.
Yeah, like at that moment when they were like, we need to talk about this, and I was like, wow. And yeah, so at that moment, shit got really real for me, and I didn't know what to expect at that moment. Yeah, I didn't know. I did not know what to expect at that moment. I was just, all I did know was I'm being fucked right now, and this is not right. That's the one thing I did know.
And that's common. Like, most people don't know what's going on in the justice system until they have to go through it.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And I hope, obviously, there's been many people before me that have gotten into situations like this or worse, but like, I hope that my story can be a start where like people start paying attention to like certain shit and start becoming more aware about certain things that they wouldn't normally be aware about, because you may need to have knowledge on this subject in the future for yourself or maybe somebody that you care about. So this was definitely an eye-opening experience, the whole thing, but definitely day one, I think that was December 14th. That was a really eye-opening experience for me.
So for those just joining us, we're joined by Shimmy, who was wrongfully accused for the last 11 months of assault and battery, which is felony assault. And the case was recently just dropped. We're also joined by his lawyer, Murat. I'm sorry.
You say tomato, I say tomato. Either way, it's good.
Okay. We're joined by his Shimmy's attorney, also Murat. And so tell me what happened in the beginning days of tell me what happened on December 14th, the first. I believe that was the first, the arraignment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the GOAT could explain that day better, because like you would literally need to hear the details of like what happened on that day, because it's just so messed up, and that's what started this crazy like situation. And for it to end how it ended, it's like you have to hear the specifics. So I would defer to him to speak about that day if he chooses so.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess to an extent, any lawyer that's a real lawyer drinks the Kool-Aid to some extent. We believe that some way in the court process we can approximate justice and I'm going to be. I mean, I think I probably lean toward the hopelessly naive spectrum of attorneys, in the sense that, you know, when I saw this case and I started peeling back the layers and learning that the charges were unfounded, you know, having seen the video evidence, spoken to witnesses, and obviously spoken to Shimmy, I was convinced that when I went into court that Monday, that the prosecutor was going to, with an embarrassed look on her face, say, Swampscott jumped the gun here. They didn't have all the facts. My bad. Here's a letter of apology and a pat on the back for Shimmy, and null pros the case or dismiss the case. I was convinced that was going to happen. I mean, I didn't, you know, I mean, as I told Shimmy from the start, you know, it can be a grueling process. I try to prepare my clients for the worst and deliver them the best, you know. But in my heart, secretly, I thought they were going to just drop this thing. But then when I walk into court with this young black male who has no prior record, and the only record regarding this young black male is his record of selfless contribution to the betterment of society, the prosecutor filed a motion seeking to have him detained without any bail at all as a dangerous person. There's a statute in Massachusetts which allows in you know, sufficiently egregious cases, the prosecutor to say, you can't let this guy go with any amount of bail, because if you do, he's going to hurt somebody. So that's the motion that they filed with respect to Shimmy. And
so they said he was a danger.
They said he was a danger to the public, and there are some really nasty components to the statute, one of which is that once the government files a motion of this nature, they also have the right to request a continuance of the hearing, to which they're entitled as a matter of law for 3 days, during which prosecutors contend that a judge has no authority but to detain that individual until there can be a hearing. Okay, so this is what they were laying down for that first day of court. And like, I'm sort of like watching this car accident in slow motion backwards, like trying to figure out what the fuck is going on here, that the DAs always would be pursuing something like this. And as the morning is progressing, I'm like, geez, I mean, have you seen this video? You know, did you look at this angle? Have you seen this photograph? Like, are we in the same universe of facts here? Like, are we experiencing the same reality? And despite like everything I was showing the prosecutor, like the kind of dream evidence that lawyers wish that they would have in many cases. I mean, she would not retreat from filing this motion. And you know, when the battle lines were ultimately drawn, and it appeared that she wasn't going to be stopped from presenting this motion, I had indicated that I was going to call two witnesses, Nate Lampkin and Mary Farrell. Mary Farrell, in particular, would have been an important witness because she saw the whole thing happen and observed that, you know, Greenberg had thrown an unknown liquid at Shimmy from a substantial distance, and then looked like she was coiling up to do it again, and that Shimmy never punched her, but rather attempted to disarm her of the perceived weapon. What is the government's response to me attempting to present witnesses that can help us arrive at the fact-finding process behind the government's allegation? She threatens that if I call any witnesses, she's going to demand a continuance of 3 days, the maximum time that she's permitted to ask for, during which Shimmy would have to be detained. So essentially, she strong-armed us into not calling witnesses that would have been highly relevant, obviously, to the court's calculus on this motion. So from that very moment began the most surreal and disturbing prosecution that I have perhaps ever been a party to. And I've been a party to a lot, I can tell you that. I was a prosecutor myself for almost 10 years, handling some of the most serious offenses that occur in Essex County, which is a county that has, you know, some areas where there's a high incidence of violent crime.
The same office that prosecuted Shimmy, correct?
That's correct. The same exact office that prosecuted Shimmy. So So that's what happened, and I think it's a noteworthy contrast when you consider, after the Commonwealth, the prosecutor filed that motion, and then after a little bit short of 11 months of litigation at this point, when we appeared for a hearing to throw out a manufactured, made-up confession that the government was trying to attribute to Shimmy, the prosecutor interrupted the call to the list to announce that she had a special deal for Shimmy, which was that she was going to generally continue the case for, I think it was 9 months or something along those lines, on the condition that he undergo anger management. So what a contrast. So dangerous that he must be detained without any bail at all as a threat to society, to a request to essentially dismiss the case after 9 months, so long as he went into some, program about anger issues. A general continuance is, it's basically just putting the case off. I mean, that's really it for 9 months.
Kicking the can down the road.
Kicking the can down the road. It doesn't require him to accept any responsibility for the offense. It's a way for a person to get what's called essentially a deferred dismissal. And my view on that was fuck no. Are we going to agree to a general continuance? But anyways, my responsibility as a lawyer is I have to, ethically provide any offer that's made by the prosecutor to, the client. And thankfully, Shimmy was strong enough to join me in a chorus of fuck no.
Fuck no, yeah, fuck no.
Yeah.
Would there have been any consequences to accepting that deal?
No, I mean, there would have been no consequences other than the fact that the case the dismissal of the case would be delayed by 9 months. But
he wouldn't get his day.
And he wouldn't get his day in court. And I would have been content at that moment if the Commonwealth simply agreed to dismiss the case. I would have probably said yes. And I would have said to Shimmy, we can say yes to that, because let's not live in a fairy tale land here. We're talking about a black man accused of assaulting a white woman in America. And no video evidence in the world can guarantee that a jury is going to, make the correct decision. Lest we forget, history is our teacher. So I would have accepted a dismissal at that point, but the fact that it was pregnant with a condition that he accept anger management, in my mind, carried with it an implicit concession upon acceptance that that his anger contributed to this incident when it did not.
So, you said that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's quite all right. I mean, there's so much to say about this case. If you do want to ask a particular question, feel free. But I also have a lot I can tell you as well.
Okay, so you guys also filed a criminal complaint against Bubbe, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Miss Greenberg. I guess I feel referring to her by sort of like a pet name applies some level of affinity that I don't want to sort of, tie myself to. So I'll call her.
For those of you who don't know Bubbe, her real name is Linda Greenberg. We all call her Bubbe because that's what she's known by. That's her nickname.
Yeah. So we, I'm gonna say, you know what? I have an actual full timeline. I've been talking to so many people about this issue that, I have pretty detailed notes. So we filed almost immediately. We requested that to the Swampscott Police Department. Yes. Okay. So on the arraignment date, I emailed the Swampscott Police Department a request that 3 individuals be charged with crimes associated with their involvement in this case. The first being Linda Greenberg for assault and battery, a civil rights violation, and misleading an investigator. With respect to Dianna Ploss and Lisa Fales, I requested that they be criminally charged with misleading an investigator based on their false statements that they observed my client, Shimmy, punch Greenberg either in the face or the chest. So we made that request in December. We received final word from the Swampscott Department on April 15th that they will not be filing a criminal complaint against Shimmy. I later learned that that was through consultation with the DA's office. In other words, that the DA's office encouraged them not to file that civilian complaint or that criminal complaint against those parties. So on April 22nd, I guess that would be exactly a week later, I completed and filed a criminal complaint with those charges against Greenberg, Ploss, and Fales. I then learned that the Lynn District Court was experiencing a serious backlog with respect to processing civilian signed complaints under circumstances where I suspect no foul play at all. This backlog was associated with the COVID crisis and a administrative decision to hold off on civilian complaint applications while that crisis was running its course. After I learned that, I contacted Doherty Warwitz, the prosecutor who had been dealing with this case, and requested that she assign what's called a conflict prosecutor in the case to pursue the criminal complaints that I had filed as a way to expedite the processing of those complaints. And I cited as reasons for that request the public's need for assurances that there will be justice for all individuals, regardless of race. That the prosecutor's office would be protecting individuals like Shimmy from crimes committed against him, and also regarding the safety concerns that the case implicated. I had previously, on February 24th and March 12th, alerted her to death threats, which Shimmy had received and which I had received, which I think added a sense of urgency to the resolution of this case. So I received no response to any of those requests from the prosecutor's office.
In fact, the prosecutor didn't message you back in many of her emails, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I would say in most of my communications, there were no responses at all to the issues that I was raising.
Would you say there was really no good faith effort to resolve this? Like they wanted someone to pay for this?
I think that we can all speculate as to what was going on in everybody's mind, but really proof of intent is something really difficult, right? I mean, to probe into somebody's mind and convincingly establish what it is that they did not intend to do, or what in fact a person's motivations are for a particular course of conduct. In my view, there was clearly circumstances which raised an inference, an appearance of impropriety, an inference that racial considerations were at play in the prosecutor's decision of who to arrest, who to charge, who not to arrest, who not to charge. And I thought that it was important for we as a public living in a democratic society to have access to all the information which would resolve the question of whether or not equal access to justice was something that would be occurring in this case.
Shimmy, what was it like getting death threats?
I mean, after a while, like I just got used to the block button, and all how it goes, Mike. Like all of these threats are coming from anonymous accounts that are probably were just made. Like most of them would be made, and then they'll just like say all this crazy shit to me, and then they'll delete their account like immediately. So it's like, what can I really do? I didn't really take any of it seriously, and I just try to like bury it in the back of my mind, because at the end of the day, I was focused on like getting these charges off of my shoulders and getting back into work, because we've got to keep for transparency, we got to keep in everybody's mind that I lost my job on December 16th, pending like first I was suspended because I thought like once my first pretrial hearing was to happen, I thought this was all going to go away and I could just go back to work. But once it didn't happen like that, they decided to let me go. But they're like, when this is all said and done, you can come back. And it dragged on for 11 months. So this whole time I wasn't working. So I could really care less about the threats, but it got to a point where it was every day, Mike, like multiple times a day. And then it was suggested that I let the authorities know that I was dealing with this or whatever. So I did that. And then miraculously, Mike, like as soon as I mentioned something to the police department, all of the threats just stopped, like on Facebook, because majority of them were on Facebook. I never got any real threats in person, but all of the social media shit stopped after my lawyers and I spoke with the police. I don't know if that one thing has to do with the other, but it's just a coincidence to me.
One thing that's remarkable in the issue.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, one thing that's remarkable in the issue of the death threats, and if I could share my screen, I wanted to show you what some of the things that we were looking at here. Is that okay, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Okay, so it says share entire screen. Okay, I'll do that. We brought these threats to the attention of the prosecutor, as I had mentioned, and not only did they not help us, they ignored us entirely. But when I published an open letter to Jonathan Blodgett's office asking for the prosecutors to appoint an independent authority to investigate whether or not a complaint should go forward with respect to Greenberg, the prosecutor's office responded by saying that I was contemptibly fanning the flames and essentially jeopardizing Danielle Doherty Warwitz, who had herself been the victim of a threat regarding which she was provided with a police escort. And I guess I find that to be a sort of an ironic assertion for the prosecutor to make. I hadn't seen any death threats issued to her. I had seen her complaining about the number of individuals who had flooded her voicemail, demanding that she dismiss Shimmy's charge and charge Greenberg instead. But I didn't see anything regarding any threats. The letter concludes essentially by pointing out that the DA's office does in fact value justice for all, but I think that it's a kind of a remarkable contrast that the white female prosecutor who allegedly received a death threat, which I haven't seen, received a police escort. We received nothing but silence in the face of these messages. So this is the first message that was sent to my website from Your Days Are Numbered at gofucking.die@yourgarbage.com. I mean, that sounds like a great URL. Anyways, if I ever come across you, I will sink my teeth into your face as I jam my fingers into your eyes. After you are incapacitated, I will turn and unleash my fury on any person deplorable enough to be seen with you. Can't wait to shit on your grave while your family watches. Gives me the warm and fuzzies.
Nice people.
Yeah, and these are some of the messages that we accumulated with respect to Shimmy. Watch your back, commie.
What I find, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what I find interesting is that, and this happens on both sides, but like both sides, like conservatives, if you don't agree with them, you're automatically a commie.
Yeah, for sure. But Shimmy apparently was a lot more than that. His address was easy to find and his family's. Proud Boys have Shimmy's name and address. Black is not a color. Black is a mental disease. Stay the fuck off my beach. I will personally grab Ernst Jean-Jacques, tie his hands and feet together with a rope, tie his feet to a long rope, and drag him down a dirt road tied to the bumper of a 1952 Oldsmobile 88 until dead. I mean, what an image that evokes. You piece of shit nigger. You like to punch old women. You need a bullet to your fucking head, you piece of shit. And finally, where Dreadlock Doc will look good on a stick out in my fields. Best scarecrow ever. Come on, hardware set. We're waiting. So, these are sort of like the tenor of the messages that Shimmy and I were receiving, and that this office that is concerned with equal justice for all paid no mind to the death threats that we received, but apparently was provided a police escort to the female white prosecutor who claimed that she received a death threat, though that was never documented.
Wow. I won't keep you guys for much longer, but I do want to. I think an issue that has been overlooked, for lack of better words, is the effects that this case has had on Shimmy's life. So sort of tell us like what like the effects this case has had on you. You're muted.
Obviously, financially, it put me in a super hard spot because my income was taken away, but obviously bills aren't suspended. Like life doesn't stop because I'm going through it or a situation. So I had to figure out what I was going to do. But luckily for me, like the community really looked out, and I was able to raise enough money to just take care of my bills for basically the entire time that I was going through what I was going through. And also, luckily for me, the National Lawyers Guild was there, and they connected me with Murat, and then Murat picked up my case pro bono because that was an additional expense that I was thinking about. Like, Mike, as soon as I got bailed out and I'm riding home, that's the first thing I'm thinking about. Like, not even like notifying my family and like everybody. I'm thinking about like, how am I going to pay for my lawyer? Because I got to go to court on Monday. And that's just a crazy thing to think about. Not like, how am I going to get my life back on track, but like, how am I going to afford a lawyer for Monday? And then on top of that, obviously, like the stress that comes with that. And then there's all the threats. And then there's the whole thought of I have an assault and battery on an elderly person over the age of 60 charge weighing on my shoulders. I've never been involved in the court system before, so I'm Googling like what kind of punishment comes with that charge, and I'm seeing something about like 2 years or something like that, and I got really scared. So that this shit like affected me a lot. And then my relationships with people are starting to like deteriorate because I'm just constantly like mad at everything, but like I can't fight my situation. I just got to wait for court to come. I got to wait for court. So I would take out my anger on like people around me, and like I can't blame them, but I can't blame myself because like I didn't put myself in this predicament. Linda Greenberg in the Swampscott Police Department in the Essex DA's office put me in this predicament. But like I can't put my anger towards them, so I'm putting anger towards people that really care about me. So like this shit has affected me a lot. But that's why I decided to stay the course and to fight this out. And that's why I didn't take the deal when they offered me anger management, because on December 12th, when the water was thrown at me, I didn't need anger management. I might need anger management now because everything that's happened to me since then. But in that moment, I didn't need anger management, so I wasn't going to take that deal. And that's also why I'm staying on this, and I'm going to keep talking about this, because somebody, Mike, has to be held accountable for this. Whoever it is. And at this point, it's no longer about my situation. This is it should be about everybody's situation, because how many other people are being screwed by the Essex DA office or any other DA office for that matter? You know, like what about the people who aren't lucky enough to have lawyers that will look out for them, or a community that will look out for them as far as their finances? Like, what if I didn't have any of that? Me and you are not having this conversation right now if I didn't have that support.
Absolutely.
So this is important. And from the bare minimum, at least what people get out of this is that like we haven't made as much progress as like we would like to say that we've had, and we need to discuss these situations in our social circles, in our towns, whether or not stuff like this is happening there. Because just because it's not happening in your town or in your social circle doesn't mean it's not happening and lives aren't being affected.
Right. I'd just like to interject that Shimmy's life, because of the wrongful accusation, has been upended. He's lost his job. You haven't been able to find a new one, correct?
Oh, but that's the thing. I waited until, well, I mean, obviously I couldn't do anything while the charges are on me. But now that they're done, like I have started taking the steps to, you know, get my life back in order, to get back into the work field. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm conflicted. I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to go back into the field that I was doing before, working with the older folk? I love it. But I also love the work that I was doing that also got me into this predicament that we're talking about right now. And I feel like because I went through everything that I went through, that like moving forward, I've got to do something along those lines. So whether it's something like working with Swampscott town officials and like the school system to work on like diversity and inclusion, or like link up with a nonprofit and help push their cause while pushing my own cause. I don't know what it looks like, but now with the weight off of my shoulders and the charges pending are no longer there, I can go and get back to work. But just because I can get back to work now, that doesn't mean that we should stop talking about what happened over the last 11 months, because that's very important. And we can't just sweep it under the rug and pretend like it didn't happen.
Absolutely. And guys, if you support Shimmy and his cause, feel free. There is a link down in the ticker at the bottom to his GoFundMe.
Can I add something, Mike?
Yeah.
But this is the thing though, right? So this entire time, I've just been unemployed. But the work and the mutual aid and the giving back and all of that stuff, that never stopped. Like, in fact, the same weekend I got arrested, I was still delivering Christmas gifts for this holiday drive that I was doing. So the only thing that stopped was me getting paid for doing work. Essentially, it just turned into me being a full-time volunteer for the last 11 months. So when I wasn't talking with Murat or Murat and dealing with my case, I'm doing community service work. And I'm doing community service work because I want to, not because Essex County or any other county for that fact told me I had to do it. That needs to be clear, because at one point in my life, I just thought you did community service because, you know, you did something bad. Like, who wants to do community service? Who wants to work for free? But I eventually got older and I saw the positivity that comes with you looking out for somebody who's in need. And as I got older, that was just something that was always a part of me. And then the situation happened and nothing stopped except my employment.
Shimmy sounds like a real danger to the community, Murat.
Right? Passing out turkeys and diapers and Barbies and stuff like that. Like, they don't talk about that, Mike. But they'll talk about the one instance where a false narrative is being pushed about me, and they'll just agree with that.
So tell me what happened on November 30th, Murat.
November 30th was the trial date. And we showed up to court ready to, finally clarify what happened, clarify who the bad actor was and who the injured party was. And we fully expected that the case would go forward to trial. I mean, we had rejected what any prosecutor would consider to be the most lenient possible disposition. So there was nothing more that they could offer, and we weren't willing to accept anything. And so we showed up for trial. We had several witnesses that were prepared to, give their evidence and testify about what they saw happen to Shimmy and their involvement in the times that they were, assaulted in the case of Hannah Connolly by Ms. Greenberg. And I was ready to expose the false narrative that the prosecution had put together, including beginning with suppressing or excluding from evidence this bogus confession that the prosecutor sought to attribute to Shimmy. And so the morning sort of proceeds with regular getting ready for trial stuff, which involves receiving a packet of jury questionnaires where they tell you who the potential jurors are in the case, and then resolving what are called pretrial motions. Those motions are essentially like asking the judge to rule on certain aspects of evidence in the case. And the government filed a litany of motions which I contend were frivolous under the law, lacked any real legal support or precedent, and were, it seems, exclusively designed to try the case based on false facts that the Commonwealth or the prosecutor was attempting to attribute to Shimmy from these prior bad acts, allegedly, where the Commonwealth was claiming that Shimmy was aggressive in the context of protests in the past, which were all just hideously false and bogus narratives, to attempting to align Shimmy with a group called Out Now, which the prosecutor attempted to essentially portray as some sort of a fringe militant group that was present at the rally, intent on looks like we all have our loved ones on us today, Shimmy. Bent on causing chaos and destruction at this rally. So in her motions, she described this so-called Out Now group as being aggressive and expressing an intent to disrupt, get in people's faces, and cause confrontations at the rally, and then sort of attribute that mindset to Shimmy, essentially attributing the hearsay statements of some unidentified person to become the statements of Shimmy. I mean, like, if that sounds mental to you, it's because it is mental. I mean, there's just no basis in the law for that. Although the correct denial of her frivolous motions was one of the grounds for which the Commonwealth cited in trying to get the judge to dismiss the case, which he refused to do. So we dealt with other issues, including, in my view, the obvious importance of identifying potential jurors that might be opposed to the Black Lives Matter principles, and opposed to Black individuals. And the prosecutor argued to the court that wasn't relevant, that we shouldn't determine whether or not people are going to be opposed to Shimmy because he's a Black male representing Black Lives Matter.
So whether the jury is biased,
correct,
doesn't matter.
Yeah, essentially, whether the jury was biased against Shimmy was not relevant, and if it was relevant, that we should determine whether or not jurors disapproved of the Trump hate message that was being espoused by Greenberg and her cohorts. And hate was the true message of that group. So essentially, the prosecutor felt that individuals that supported the Ploss group's principles were fit to sit in this jury, and those that did not were unfit to sit in this jury. So essentially, that motion would have made sure that only Proud Boys were determining Ernst's guilt or innocence. I mean, the level of frivolity and lack of good faith that underlay those requests was really astounding, to be candid. Luckily,
it sounds like you'd have to be there to believe it.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, all of this, it feels like a story that I would never believe to be based on reality unless I experienced it myself at ground zero every step of the way. So luckily we drew a judge who is considered to be a potent judge, a judge who is not afraid to sort of like control the courtroom with an iron fist, but in his handling of this case demonstrated what I thought was a mastery of the legal principles that applied. And what you want a judge to do is call balls and strikes for what they are, right? You want a judge to make the correct legal calls without passion or prejudice. And
You know,
judge,
my lawyer in Connecticut has always said that the prosecutors control the courtroom. The judges are just guests in the courtroom.
what an interesting viewpoint. You know, I don't know that I agree. I think that prosecutors are, you know, the animating force behind certain you know, actions that are taken in court, particularly and obviously in criminal cases. But I think that judges, at least judges that take seriously the responsibility to, you know, to minister over proceedings, do have an invaluable role as a check against, you know, potential tyranny.
Well, I didn't mean in that. He didn't mean in that sense. More in the sense that the prosecutors basically control the courtroom and the judges, you know, let them.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, I think that a judge who wants to make a safe call will side with the prosecutor. You know, and using, for example, a completely different, more mundane scenario where, you know, say, for example, a person is accused of a violent crime, like shooting somebody, and the defense lawyer wants that person to be released on probation, and the prosecutor wants them to be hung in the public square. I mean, the easy thing for the judge to do is to side with the prosecutor, because, quite frankly, no judge ever got in trouble for being too strict. Judges do get in trouble for being too lenient sometimes, at least in the public eye. So in that regard, I mean, I think what your lawyer is implying is a lack of fiber on the part of the judiciary, but I don't know that that is always the case. And I certainly enter court with the hope that every judge that I encounter is going to apply the law correctly and fairly. But as specifically to this case, which is the one that we're talking about here today, Judge Nestor called balls and strikes, and he made the correct rulings that were necessary to allow this case to be tried based on truth, facts, and competent evidence, not sort of like insinuation and innuendo and unproven and really false narratives that were being advanced by the prosecutor in terms of these so-called bad acts and attempts to attribute the purported mindset of others to the defendant. An attempt to attribute a statement that any prosecutor would worth their salt would know was a terrible idea, to try to introduce the statement that Sergeant Alex testified to, and then, you know, in my view, perjured himself regarding during this trial. So anyway, so we dealt with all those pretrial motions, and then as the morning was evolving, the court revealed that a criminal complaint had issued against Linda Greenberg, and you know, I felt an incredible amount of relief knowing that had happened, and some renewed or reinvigorated faith in the system, Mike, because you know, the case wasn't just killed behind closed doors in the way that we feared that it might have been.
Finally, someone who was looked at as the victim throughout this whole thing is now the perpetrator.
That's correct. And so then what next happens is the judge indicates that he's going to make sure that Linda Greenberg has the opportunity to consult with her attorney to determine whether or not in the face of an actual criminal prosecution, she wants to go on record and talk about what happened that day and answer my questions. And what ends up happening is the prosecutor and Chambers are invited by the judge to talk, and they take a recess to discuss what happened. And I think the judge suggested they should talk about the Fifth Amendment issue and whatever issue she had with the pretrial motions, and they adjourned for that purpose. And the adjournment was really quite lengthy. During that period of time, there remained a packed courtroom. So it was supposed to be a 15-minute recess. It ended up being, I think, 55 minutes or somewhere close to that. toward the end of the recess, Chambers, the lawyer for Linda Greenberg, appeared on the Zoom, which was pointed solely to the clerk, so he couldn't see that his words were being heard by a packed courtroom. And he announced that his client would be asserting her Fifth Amendment privilege not to testify. In other words, hiding behind her evidentiary privilege to not talk for fear that her words would incriminate her in criminal conduct. So that announcement was made in open court. It was heard by a packed courtroom, following which a few minutes later, the judge came on the bench and said, okay, is Attorney Chambers here and ready to address the court? And the prosecutor says something along the lines of, before we get there, Judge, and then complains about his correct rulings of law and asks the judge to dismiss the case, citing only the her perceived claim that the judge misapplied the law, which any jurist, any person who practices law or has any basic familiarity with the law would know were all frivolous, unfounded motions. So the judge
sounds like he was just looking for a scapegoat.
Correct. That's certainly a correct inference to draw. And after the judge, heard her complaining, he interrupted her and emphasized that he, simply applied the law to the legal issues that were presented and made his rulings. And she then said that she would like the judge to dismiss the case. In other words, to put his sort of agreement on the dismissal of the case. And the judge said no, he wasn't going to do it, that this was essentially her mess and she had to deal with it herself.
And she was trying to save face.
And she was trying to save face, sure, by at least getting the judge to agree that dismissal was appropriate. But instead, what she was forced to do was file a null prosequi, which is a nullification of the prosecution. In other words, a withdrawal of the charges. And so that was that. That was that. And that was that beautiful, clear moment of justice that I talked about and that I always treasure, where Linda Greenberg was the defendant, was the accused, was the criminal, and Ernst Jean-Jacques was the victim.
And there's, I imagine, Linda Greenberg's reaction after the case was dismissed.
Yeah, for sure. So then, we held a press conference after the hearing explaining what it is that occurred in court. And we then, the next morning, I read the paper and saw that a remarkable turn of events had occurred. Apparently, after the case was dismissed against Shimmy by the prosecutor brought forward the criminal case that was pending against Linda Greenberg. The case wasn't on for court that day, it was on for January. But she brought it forward in the court after we had left, brought it forward in front of a different judge, Judge Jean Curran, and dismissed the charge against Linda Greenberg before she even had to face a judge. So within a matter of hours, the prosecution of Linda Greenberg, which was determined to be founded by standard of probable cause by both the clerk magistrate and the independent auditors who had investigated the conduct of Swampscott police in the first instance.
So let me get this straight. So it took 11 months to drop the charges against Shimmy, even though I would argue that there was clear video evidence that he didn't do what they said he did. And it took less than 12 hours to dismiss the charges against Linda Greenberg, despite, again, I would argue that there was clear video of her assaulting and battering Shimmy.
Right. I mean, the evidence, in my view, against Greenberg was overwhelming. And I think the evidence of Shimmy's innocence was similarly overwhelming. And yet the white woman receives a dismissal under cover of darkness, Mike, after the court proceeding was over, after Shimmy had left the courthouse and his attorney and his advocate had left the courthouse. She appeared in front of a different judge to file that document in court.
That's how all the ugly shit gets passed, by cover of darkness.
I certainly will say that the ugly shit happened in this particular case under cover of darkness. And notably, Mike, that was also in violation of the Victims' Bill of Rights, which is normally a piece of legislation that I find DA's office is rallying around, which is the importance of protecting the rights of the victims of crimes to certain procedural safeguards, including, as applicable here, Mike, the safeguard of having a prosecutor confer with the victim prior to entering a null pros on a criminal charge. What happened to the Victims' Bill of Rights with respect to Shimmy? Shimmy was not notified of an intention to null pros the case. His attorney wasn't notified of that intention. Shimmy wasn't consulted about whether or not a null pros was the interest of justice. His attorney wasn't consulted regarding that. Where to and whither the Victims' Bill of Rights, I wonder, in this prosecutor's office that grants equal justice for all?
They say to let the system work until, I would argue, one of your own is in the system, and then they fix the case. They dismiss it. They short circuit it.
Right. One of the issues that I'm dealing with now is what I consider to be a highly problematic instance of conflict of interest and the appearance of impropriety. We as lawyers not only have to assure that we do not act improperly, we must assure that we don't give the appearance of acting improperly. And under that set of facts, where we're dealing with a prosecutor who has invested in one side of the narrative, the white woman as victim of a black male side of the narrative, to then become the prosecutor on both sides of the case, right? Prosecuting both. She prosecutes Jean-Jacques and she prosecutes Linda Greenberg, but then decides that she's not going to prosecute or terminate the prosecution of Linda Greenberg in probably record time for any prosecution in the history of prosecutions, right? So I have called upon the Essex County DA's office to evaluate whether that was the proper course of action. Because,
and just so everyone knows, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to be fair, I did reach out to Jonathan Blodgett. I asked him if he wanted to come on to this live stream and explain his letter to you. And of course, I got no response. So, but I did want to mention that out of fairness to both sides, I did contact the district attorney, Jonathan Blodgett.
Well, Mike, I'm so happy to hear that you did that, because it is only through transparent conversation where all parties can be heard that the truth can be ascertained. So I'm glad that you invited Mr. Blodgett to appear on this podcast to explain his position with respect to what happened in this case. A position that, quite frankly, I was surprised by and I'll confess disappointed by, because in my heart and in my mind, I believe that, the system has the potential to function fairly. And I hoped and believed that DA Blodgett was unaware of exactly what was going on. But I learned the terrible reality that Attorney John Blodgett has placed his stamp of approval on all of the prosecutor's actions in this case. And so it really, in my view, underscores the importance of the conversation that we're now having. So the prosecutor essentially responded with a lot of ad hominem attacks and personal insults, and didn't really touch upon at all the legal issues which I was raising regarding conflict of interest, regarding retraction of false statements made to the press, regarding Greenberg not indicating she would take the fifth, regarding the failure to appoint an independent prosecutor, the appearance of potential racial bias infecting the prosecution. He answered none of those questions, and instead he made some personal attacks and
Digs his feet in.
Say again?
Digs his feet in.
Yeah, dug his feet in and really sort of like underscored his position that, well, we looked at the full circumstances of the case and we determined that Shimmy was the dominant aggressor and that he endangered the life of a poor old innocent 80-year-old woman. And I wanted to, on that point, talk about a few things. Number one, the woman Greenberg claimed that she got water on Shimmy by accident. She testified under oath at the clerk's hearing that it was an accident. And that was a statement that she made by a recording that was made by, I think, Hannah Connolly, that it was an accident, and she doubled down on that, on that claim. This is an accident that, if I could share my screen again, was apparently caused because of her hand tremors, which it appears caused water to propel from her water bottle at a distance. If you can look here at where Shimmy's foot is and where the water is, and where it appears that Greenberg's foot is, at least 6 or 7 feet away. At least 6 or 7 feet away.
I don't have your screen on here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me try that again.
Hey, Mike, can you let me in?
Can I what?
Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
And did you be able to let Shimmy in?
I don't see a screen yet.
Sorry, let me just pause for a second here. And so, is Shimmy, you back in? Are you back in action?
Yeah, I'm back in action.
Great. Let me try to share my screen one more time. So, you see my screen?
Yeah, hold on. There it is.
Okay, and let me just put up this picture now. You see that picture?
Yep.
You see those good-looking feet at the left bottom of the screen?
I do.
That's Shimmy. So if you look at where his foot is and compare that to, where it appears that Greenberg's foot is, you can see we're talking about a distance of probably about 6 or 7 feet. I mean, Shimmy wears a size 10 shoe. So that's quite a distance for an 80-year-old woman to accidentally propel water on somebody, I would imagine. If you then watch the video, the live stream, which you showed, you can see really quite a premeditated course of conduct. She's watching Shimmy dance, giving him like a 1,000-yard stare. She stops, she turns away, she starts walking toward this cache of water bottles, pauses for a moment, looks back at Shimmy with that 1,000-yard stare again, returns exactly to where he is, and then drenches him with water, by accident. While she was mad because of the way he was gyrating. Another thing that I thought was interesting was in the clerk's hearing, she testified that she did not know that Shimmy was black. And I'm just sort of curious as to what you folks think when you watch this video in terms of what it is that she did or did not know. Let's see here. Are you able to see the video on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to try to get to the critical moment here. She's watching Shimmy. There's Shimmy's black hand. There's Shimmy's black face. Looking again and not knowing that he's a black man. Getting her bottle, returning to him, not knowing he's a black man. And him again and then drenching him with water. I think that it's important to note the absurdity of her claim that this was some sort of an accident, and it's important to note the absurdity of her claim that she didn't know that Shimmy was a black male. Of course, he was a black male, a fact that she knew. To the extent that she claimed that the incident itself was an accident, I asked her at the clerk's hearing how many people she accidentally assaulted within 20 minutes before she assaulted Shimmy, and her testimony was none. So I'm going to show you now. I want to see if I can do like a split screen. No, it looks like I can't. I want to show you now the first person that she assaulted. That would be Hannah Connolly at, let's see. Who had a Black Lives Matter sign in her hands. Okay. Sorry, it's just so hard to get this exact time. Let me try it up here. You still with me, Mike? So that's her shoving Hannah Connolly. 1 minute later, we have her trying to hit somebody with a flag. You see that here. Okay, that was a little hard to see. And then there's her actually succeeding in hitting that man with a flag 5 minutes before she assaults Shimmy. I don't know if you guys can hear me still. It looks like Mike and Shimmy are gone.
It's all about you now.
Anyway,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
Sorry.
me?
Yeah, something's wrong with my my camera, but I can hear you just fine. Sorry about that.
No problem. And Shimmy says that he's there. I don't know if you can let him in too.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping you guys were able to see sort of.
Uh-oh.
Are we okay with the audio?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that you guys were able to see the videos that I played there.
I saw them. They were up.
Great. And I just want to contrast that with the testimony of Greenberg at that hearing. Which is transcribed right here. Question. So you did not push anybody on purpose, correct? No. You did not try to hit anybody with your flag. No. You did not try to drench Mr. Jean-Jacques with water. Drench him? No. Did you try to get him wet? No. So again, I think that all of that is compelling evidence regarding her state of mind and her intentions with respect to, attacking Shimmy. He was the fourth person that she attacked within the space of about 20 minutes. And I would suggest that goes directly to the issue of who was in fact the dominant aggressor and who was the true criminal in this case. And unfortunately, those were all, the bases under which the Commonwealth claimed that their action in this case was correct. But I guess I leave it to the public to determine whether or not that evidence is consistent with what the government claims. Shimmy, buddy, looks like we lost the host here. So you want to get a deck of cards and play a game?
No, I think he's still here. He had a problem with his camera, but I think just what needs to be said over and over and over is what you've clearly been saying and pointing out, that there have been discrepancies in how my situation has been handled versus how Linda's was handled. And that's why we're staying a course, and we're not just chalking it up that my charges were dropped and we can forget that it happened. Like, somebody needs to be held accountable for this, and we have so much evidence to prove that there's something going on. It's like I don't understand how the DA's office is like owning up to this and standing on the things that have been done. I can't fathom that this is happening. So.
Right, and I guess the only thing that we can do, Shimmy, is exactly what we've been doing, talking about it, bringing this to the into the public forum, so that we can all maintain a watchful eye on what's happening within the court system, and the great distance that we still must sort of cross in order to achieve the system of fairness and justice for all, regardless of race, that we all aspire toward.
Sorry about that, guys. I was having technical difficulty.
No problem. You missed a stellar audio video presentation I tried to make.
No, I saw it. It just wasn't responding on my end. So
Gotcha.
The feedback, I think, is coming from might be coming from Shimmy's cell phone. It might be the audio might be feeding back into the microphone. So I've muted him right now, but I'd like to first ask you this question. What have you learned from this case? Murat.
I'll let Shimmy answer that.
Okay.
Do you still hear feedback, or am I good now?
No, you're good.
So what I learned from this case is what I said before, that, Massachusetts is not as it's not as like welcoming and like accepting as I thought. And even in 2021, with visual evidence and proof and witnesses that Black man's word is not as valuable as white woman's word. And to even the fact that so many people's situation and it still got dragged on, it's just like, now I understand why people.
You still there, Shimmy?
The people that hold the titles in the roles of responsibility. And I just know moving forward, I have to move differently, because I don't ever want to put myself in, because it's not fun, and I don't wish this feeling on anybody. And I'm grateful that my situation wasn't worse than it was.
You know what I've learned is from my cases, from all my cases, 4 or 5 or 6, I lost count right now, is that the government doesn't like being wrong. And they will defend their position until they can no longer defend it anymore, until it's indefensible.
And that's the vibe that I got once the deal was offered. I had the sense that there was some backpedaling going on. So Murat and I we stuck the course, and we saw it out. And I thought it was going to continue forward, but it didn't. And she dropped the charges when she realized, her being the assistant district attorney, when she realized that she had nothing to go forward with, and she had to end this nightmare. But it's a shame, and this nightmare should have never happened to begin with. And that's what I'm learning, that the system is not it's not as fixed as we thought it was, or there's not as much progress as we thought there was.
Right. I have to say that your observation was really astute and smart about, the reality of what happens in court is that the government does not want to admit when it's wrong, and I think that's just a really smart way to crystallize what occurred here. I mean, until the very last minute, the prosecutor wanted some way to be able to declare victory in this case, in some way, and attempted to create the circumstances where that would possible, where we would yield, where we would say that's enough, where we would say we give in to her point of view. And it was only when we had jury questionnaires in our hand and when she would have to actually present her evidence that the case fell apart, with her so-called victim hiding behind her privilege not to incriminate herself, rather than bring to light the events that happened that day and subject herself to cross-examination. In terms of lessons learned here, I echo Shimmy's sentiment that the terrible truth is that we have an extremely long way to go in finding balance and fairness in our criminal justice system. I also learned that it is a hard and lonely fight to take on. The concept of accusing, the government of some level of wrongdoing. The government will level all of its power against you to punish you for doing that.
It's not easy to be right when the government is wrong.
That's right. And I guess the important thing that I learned, most important thing that I learned here, is that we have to know what's right and what's wrong. And we then need to be willing to fight for what's right and what's wrong. We need to be willing to fight no matter what, until the very end, to talk when they try to silence us, to talk louder and louder till somebody hears us. That's the only way that we're going to make any level of change.
Absolutely.
And that change is a long time coming, and I will continue to talk about it, and I will continue to encourage Shimmy and like-minded folks to talk about it without fear, and knowing and trusting and hoping that every incremental step that they take is a step forward in the right direction toward the ideals of justice that we all aspire toward.
Two more questions, and then I promise I'll let you go, because this has gone on a lot longer than I thought it would. But it's been a great live stream, and I appreciate you guys for joining me. The first question is that I've seen a lot in the comments is there going to be some sort of lawsuit? Are you guys discussing that? Are you looking into it? What's your thoughts on that?
So I'll answer that question, and by stating, unfortunately, I'm not able to comment on whether and what level of further litigation will occur. What I can say is that this case will continue to be discussed in the public forum, and we are going to utilize every mechanism in our power to advance the goals that we set in motion in December of 2020. So unfortunately, that's kind of a lawyer answer, which is a non-answer.
No, I understand completely. Lastly, is there anything you guys want to leave us with?
I'll let Shimmy have the last word on that. I'll simply state that what I'd like to leave folks with is my sincere gratitude for all the people with boots on the ground, risking their lives and risking their freedom to fight for these important causes. It is only because of your courage that we're able to have this conversation today, and I'm immensely grateful for the patriots among you that have, put yourselves in a line of fire to advance and champion the causes of freedom. Thank you.
The only thing I would add is I don't know what word I could use for it, but I would say I just beg everybody to just, if you don't want to talk about my situation, just talk about any situation that you see in your community or in your social circle that's just not right. Because the state of just the world right now, it's just not good. And for things to be happening all over the world the way they are right now, there's just work to be done. And if you want to focus on like my situation in particular, like Mike put at the bottom, if you want to reach out to the district attorney office and just ask them just questions about what you've heard this evening, you know what I mean? I'm grateful for that, because like we said earlier, I'm not the only person that's going through a situation like this. And there are some people that are going through far worse than I am. So we need to shed light on all those injustices so that maybe one day we don't have to have conversations like this.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Again, you guys have been awesome. This has gone a little longer than I expected, but I appreciate the conversation and you guys joining my audience.
There's a lot to pack in there, so I appreciate you for having us.
You're welcome. And do continue to keep us updated as things progress.
Of course.
We'll do, Mike, and
thank you.
We appreciate it very much.
You're welcome, and thank you. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night.
So there you have it. If this could happen to someone who works in an assisted living, someone who, by all accounts, is a peaceful guy who was only trying to defend himself on December 12th, 2020, who helps his community, who serves his community by donating food, hygiene products. He's out there week after week, every Friday, I believe, serving the community of Boston, helping those who are less fortunate than us. If something like that could happen to him, then it can happen to anyone. And I guess what I would encourage everyone here to do, if Shimmy's story resonates with you, if you find his cause to be just, if his story touches you, then feel free to donate to him. His life has been upended by this prosecution. He lost his job. He lost his health care. He has been going through wrongful accusations. The story has been spun to make him out to be the perpetrator in Linda Greenberg, aka Bubbe, the victim, when all he was doing was defending himself. Donate to him today. And I want to I want to show you guys at the beginning of the at the beginning of the live stream, I showed you guys merch that I made for him that I'm selling on my site. 100% of the profits from this live stream tonight, whether it be ads or comments that you've paid to be highlighted, or the hoodie, the Shimmy free hoodie, will go to him. And I want to show you guys the hoodie. If you go to the link is also in the ticker at the bottom, but if you go to picard.co, if you go to picard.co, this is my website. You go to the merch page, you go down to the bottom, and you'll see the Shimmy Free hoodie. The hoodie is $40, and besides what it costs to make, the profits will go directly to Shimmy to help him rebuild his life. So I encourage you guys, I implore you guys, if his story at all resonated with you, then go to the GoFundMe site at the on the ticker at the bottom, or donate by buying his hoodie on my website, or you can help by sharing this live stream, just to show, don't let this go out of the public eye. Don't forget about what happened to Shimmy, what he had to go through, the lies that he had to endure at the hands of Bubbe, Dianna and her group, Dianna Ploss, that is, and call the district attorney, Jonathan Blodgett. I'm not, of course, be civil, but call him and voice your concern, your disagreement. Do what you can to put justice in America front and center. Just reading through comments, guys. Thank you, Kyle. Love you guys too. Buy the Shimmy Free hoodie today. It's $40 plus shipping. So besides what it costs to make, which is around $26 plus shipping, the rest of it will go to Shimmy to help him rebuild his life. Again, the website to buy merch is at the bottom, scrolling by. It's picard.co/merch. So I know it's been a minute since we did a live stream, and I'm coming back next week to do another live stream. Next week, we will be joined by Rod Weber and Lauren Pespiza, who are both documentary filmmakers, and they're up for a Grammy for their latest 2020 The Dumpster Fire documentary, and they're up for an indictment, maybe. The federal government is currently persecuting them for their film, and we'll talk to them next week, and it'll be a good discussion. And again, the government doesn't like to be wrong, so they'll defend their stance until it's no longer defensible. And so we'll talk to them next week. Guys, love you. Thank you so much for the support. I want to reiterate that if you bought merch anywhere from around November 14th and after, we haven't forgotten about you. It'll be coming around the first of the month. Thank you guys so much for your support. And because of you guys, there is a backlog in merch, in shipping the merch. So that only shows how much you guys are supportive, and I love you guys for that. Thank you, and have a great night. Bye-bye.